have give my other counselors a chance to join. I'm joined by Counselor Hogan. I see Counselor Green. We've got Commissioner Lefebvre here, Commissioner Robinson with DPW. I see Christina Ferraro with Cornell Cooperative Extension, and Justin Kantowski with the USDA. This meeting is to report back on the results from this year's Deer and Tick program. I'll let Greg Lowe get into it, but for some of you may know, we like many other projects, we faced some challenges with COVID this year, but we want to get an update and see how this year went. So, Greg, I'll let you take it from here. You're on mute, sir.
Multitasking, trying to get the presentation up and microphone at the same time. Thank you, Councilor Driscoll. This is Greg Lowe, Chief Policy Officer, and among my duties for the city is intergovernmental relations, which is why today I'm taking responsibility for delivering this presentation, because this work is very much about intergovernmental partnership and cooperation, because the tick and deer management problem or challenge is one that faces multiple communities in the city. I want to note, in addition to Commissioner Lefebvre, Pete Bardou, our ground superintendent, is on the phone today and is a key part of the team that works to ensure this program is managed safely and effectively. Also, City Auditor Nada Maroon is here, who partners and works with us with the county legislature's tick and deer management task force. And two members of the mayor's advisory group on tick and deer management are also with us today, Tom Quinn and Ken Garno. I'm quickly looking down to see if I've overlooked anybody that I should be referencing. Oh, I'm glad to see that Chief Schaaf has been able to join us today with Syracuse Police, because the work that we do on tick and deer management is coordinated with the Syracuse Police Department. And of course, obviously, I see multiple counselors, and thank the council for its support on this program. I'm going to dive in now to an update on the program this year, and then make sure we should have plenty of time for questions and further discussion about the future direction of the program. So first up, I think those on the call are well aware that both the city and neighboring municipalities have been for many years, decades really, the consequences of a growing overpopulation of deer. And in response to the concerns that occur due to that, serious public health concerns, real public safety problems, the city did begin its deer damage management program in certain areas in the city in the winter of 2019 and 2020. As Councilor Driscoll noted in his quick introductory remarks, despite delays that were caused by the pandemic, the program was continued in 2021, which is good news and is important. The purpose of this program is to address the impact of the overpopulation, specifically of white-tailed deer in the city. And there's three categories of problems that result from this. Often people think of this issue and might always equate the issue of deer population with just Lyme disease. And Lyme disease is a serious concern, but the reason deer management happens is also about the frequency of deer vehicle accidents, the impact of the overpopulation of deer on the ecosystem, on our parks, and on people's gardens. And yes, absolutely, as there are people on this call who know well, either directly or through family members, the public health risks that result, in particular, the concern about Lyme disease. But it's very important that we look at the full picture of the reason that deer management happens. It's all three issues. because addressing Lyme disease alone requires other actions to try to address the concerns of Lyme disease. Doing deer management alone to address Lyme disease would not be a suitable solution. So this is part of an integrated program that also includes public education. The public education process was a little more difficult this year as well due to the pandemic, and we look forward to making sure there's a robust public education program going forward. So let's talk about the deer management program, a refresher for anyone who'd like it regarding what the program is that's managed. So the city, working with the USDA, our Parks Department, and neighborhood partners, selected sites that meet really strict New York State DEC criteria. And the original sites from the first year of the program were selected on the east, west, and south sides of the city. The types of properties that we use are either large private property or city-owned properties. So these sites are not open to the public during the time that deer management work is completed, which is in the nighttime. In any case that is not a city property, there's explicit written permission from the property owner to use that site. So deer management should never occur at a site that we don't have written permission. If there's hunting going on someplace else in the city, deer management, that's not part of our program and it's not allowed. The work needs to happen at least 500 feet away from any occupied dwelling. And then, you know, the last point to make that is really important is this work is funded by Onondaga County. We would not be able to execute this work without the assistance of the county. It recognizes this as a public health issue and provides the funding for the program, and was able to this past year, even though decisions needed to be made at a time of real financial uncertainty. And of course, the DEC has a regulatory role in approving sites and the program. Councilor Driscoll introduced Justin Kantowski from the USDA, who's here with us today. The work is done by his team of trained, experienced wildlife managers. The work is conducted in coordination with Syracuse Police. So with Chief Schaaf here, SPD knows the work that is happening on the nights that it's happening and is available to respond if needed. The city had, at the start of this program, issued public notice. We did this year, we did the prior year. We don't disclose the specific sites at which work happens because the experience in other parts of the state and other parts of the country is that just can draw further activity to one of those areas, which decreases safety. So again, the work is done in places that are private or they're closed, and it's done at nighttime. And the USDA team is very experienced and has excellent systems in place to ensure safety during their work. And I already mentioned the night. So on to the results. What happened this past season? So the work happened during the months of February and March. So that's less than half the time period of the prior year's program. Ideally, what should happen, and as we look ahead, if we're going to continue this program, and we believe obviously continuing is the right direction, you want to start baiting work in November, you want to start deer management work and have 4 solid months. We had 2 this year, and we actually, February is really when baiting started. So the actual time period of deer management was even shorter than that 8-week period. Nonetheless, the project was able to remove 65 deer. There were, that comes out to an average of about 6.5 per night. The math is real simple. I think they were able to get out 10 nights during that time period. The work does yield venison that is collected and delivered. Close to 2,000 pounds of venison and 5,700 or so meals to those in need. And looking at the picture, while the 65 number is less than last year was 159. We had less than half of the time period to work. But we do have, over a 2-year period, 224 deer removed over that time period, which the experts in deer management tell us that's a 2-year program is a good start to the program and successful in its meeting its mission thus far. A couple of other results points to mention. The weather conditions at various times in this shortened season did adversely impact the program. It's one of the reasons that we're less than half of last year. What I mean by that is heavy snow came not long after we were baiting when it happened. And then that snow developed kind of a crusty surface, and that crusty surface, just snow itself, and then the crusty surface limited deer movement a little bit. And so that created some challenge. There is, as there was last year, some intentional and unintentional interference with baiting activities at several of the locations. The project overall was completed well under the authorized budget. Total costs for this year's program, we checked in this morning, we do believe all costs are in at this point. It was just under $21,000. Again, funded by Onondaga County. Good news as it relates to results of what's happening now and what comes next. The first of this year's public information meetings on tick-borne illness and protecting yourself from Lyme disease and tick-borne illnesses will be May 20th. It's a virtual meeting. It is posted on the city's website for those who want information to participate in that meeting. The USDA, to the members of the council, late yesterday, we forwarded the USDA's recap memorandum to the city of the results of the program. It does include a section about about its recommendations going forward. It, as it did the prior year, recommends that we identify additional properties to increase the overall coverage. It is a reality that there are pockets of the city that the current requirements make it difficult to site deer management sites. And so that's going to require some more analysis and review, possibly considering other methods that could be used that don't involve the use of a firearm. And that'll be part of what we need to look at going forward. And then tracking the deer damage data is an effective way, USDA reminds us, to try to keep an eye on the progress of the program, which we will be working to implement in this upcoming year. So next steps. I mentioned earlier that Tom Quinn and Ken Garno are on who are members of our Tick and Deer Management Advisory Group. Also on that group are representatives of other neighborhoods in the city. That group will convene again and take a look at the program. In particular, look at one of the limitations we had this year. Because of the uncertainty of finances, we were not able to seriously look at adding additional sites. We are hopeful that that will be able to happen in the next season ahead. We will conduct additional public outreach. The Parks Department is working very closely with Christina Farrar and her team. Christina, thank you for being on and for all you do with the support of the county. And I see Travis Glazier has joined, who has been our key contact at the county. So thank you, Travis. One of the key responsibilities of Cornell Cooperative Extension of Onondaga County is helping us with this education and illness prevention. Implementation of tracking steps are going to be important. Tick density, deer damage, and how we're doing on public education. And with the input of the Tick and Deer Management Advisory Committee, we will update the action plan and then plan to present to the council late summer, early fall, and update on what we expect to see happen for the year ahead. And we do recommend continuing the program in 2021-22. One of the things that is commonly and strongly believed by those who are involved in deer management is that this is a challenge that has evolved over many years, and it will take a number of years of consistent effort to try to bring the deer population numbers back to something closer to balance. They are multiples higher in city neighborhoods than the recommended per square mile presence. 5, 6, 7, 8 times higher than the recommended ideal numbers. And Councilor Driscoll and all those on the call, that is the prepared remarks we had. As noted, Justin Kantowski is here, Christina Farrar is here, Onondaga County is here, members of our advisory committee, obviously the Parks Department that plays Julie and Pete who play a key role in the program. And we also have with us the knowledge of Auditor Maroon with his work over the years on deer management.
Great, thank you, Greg, for that presentation. I guess I will open it up to my fellow counselors first. I've been behind the scenes talking to some of these folks, so I'll let the other counselors have first crack. Counselor Hogan, Counselor Green. I don't know if anyone else is on, but if any of you guys have any questions, feel free to set it off.
I'm all set. I appreciate the presentation. Thanks.
I am all set, and I have to compliment everybody on this collaborative effort between the county, the city, and it certainly speaks well that we can get together like this and resolve a situation and an issue like this. Thank you.
I still absolutely love the fact that this took every layer of government in order to do it. We had to have the council, the mayor, the county, the state, and the federal government all in the room to make some venison stew. It's an amazing situation. But Auditor Maroon, I don't know if you had any remarks. I know you've been intimately involved with this for a number of years and have been a real advocate for this. Any thoughts, comments, questions?
Thank you, Councilor Driscoll. I have two. One is, and Greg, thank you for your presentation. Always a pleasure. When we talk about additional site locations, what process is used to evaluate? And I'm not directing it to you, Greg. I don't know if it's Justin and Christina. So what are we using to currently evaluate site locations that are going to yield a better result? And I say that probably a little bit biasly because with Tom, Quinn, and myself living on the east side in Corey, we have only 15 resulting in understanding that we had 2 less months. But what's the criteria going to be going forward that we're going to use to enhance the ability? My yard is always available.
Greg, I can chime in on how I think that we can do it moving forward if you'd like. So Julie LaFave, Commissioner of Parks. So the way it worked in the last year leading into the pandemic is residents contacted us with, a request, a plea for help or whatever it may be, adding an address or a neighborhood. Unfortunately, this year, as Greg mentioned, we did not add any locations just due to a number of factors, but I would suggest that Parks, because we are the ones who work directly with filling out the DEC permits, adding locations, the 12A documents, that the addresses be forwarded to the Parks Department. We can start a shared document amongst the committee so that we can assess them, see if they fit the criteria. But Parks would be happy moving forward to manage that aspect of it.
Okay, thank you. And then my part two or second question is relative to the funding. Greg, you alluded to that. what is the current status of conversation relative to the funding? And I say that in the context that, as you're probably aware and others, I originally went to the county to ask for monies, and currently part of the countywide deer and tick task force. And this past year, I think somewhat due to the pandemic and the cuts in budget, et cetera, there was intention by members of the committee and on the legislature to pull back some of the funding. I argued against that, and I still would maintain that position. I know that there has also been the desire to have municipalities underwrite some of the cost, quote, skin in the game, quote, mentality. I'm not sure that can work for all municipalities. There may be some that could perhaps do some of that, but alls can't. And I still see this as a public health problem, much like the EEE. And so it should not, in my humble opinion, fall in that category of making the municipalities have to pay for it. And I know there'll be disagreement about that, and that's okay. But so where are we with the funding as it relates to the city?
Well,
the
I'll
county?
start, and I think I can answer the question fully and then leave open if Travis Glazier wants to add anything to it. But Auditor, the good news is that with the support of the county executive and the legislature, the county was in fact in the end able to cover 100% of our costs this year. They did come in less than half of our projected budget. Our original budget projection here, I think, was on the order of 45,000-ish. Julie can sort of nod if I'm in the right ballpark. And it came in, is that right, Julie? Was the
I was
original
typing
budget
notes for this. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
What we requested 55. Is that what you asked?
55. Yeah, and it came in at 21 at this stage, which is what we think. So, Auditor, the good news is we are being reimbursed fully for that amount. I think if Travis wants to address, I don't know that the county's able to project what will happen the next season yet, but I'll ask Travis if he wants to open his mic.
Just that
I gave you no choice. Sorry, Travis.
you articulated it correctly.
Yeah. Yep.
So again, I guess I had, after the ARP funding announcement, and I don't know the status of that relative to the county and the city specifically, timing of that. But certainly some funding was restored on a federal level to the municipalities. And so is the intent for the city to pursue what Commissioner LaFave just mentioned in terms of a more robust activity this year and funding requests from the county?
I think that I'll start by just saying that our intent as we begin to think ahead will be to resume a program at the level of the proposed original budget last year, 55. And given what happens in multiple years, I don't know that we will. I mean, I won't want to try to predict the future. I'll say of at least 55, but I want to leave room for the advisory group to consider sites, consider how we address problem areas like yours, Auditor, on the east side. We do hear regularly from neighbors who we hear sort of a balance of those who say, this is a big difference. And then we hear those who say, I see no difference. And it's very geographic specific. So, Auditor, I think we anticipate proposing a program of at least last year's budget and potentially higher. And if I could indulge Councilor Driscoll, could I call on Tom Quinn from the advisory group to add in? I see he raised his hand.
Yes, please join in, Mr. Quinn.
Tom, you're on mute.
Oh, we're still not getting
Now,
you, Tom.
can you hear me now?
Yeah,
We
yeah,
hear
we
you
got
now,
you now.
Tom. Yep. Now until we don't. We lost you
It went,
again, Tom.
it went away again.
How about now?
Yep, now we got you.
All right. When last year, or I guess it was early, yeah, last year in January, I requested 10 of my neighbors to give permission for execution closer than the 500 feet. Because it was really not to help the city, it was to help the adjacent town of DeWitt property. All 10 signed. Took a little bird dogging, took neighbor to neighbor, but there was really no resistance because the problem is so acute in our neighborhood. I do think Julie's suggestion that people who complain or question what's going on are a starting point, and if we can perhaps using parks people, perhaps using people from the advisory group, we can enable the local neighbors to communicate with one another. I think the communication here is very good to support because it's spotty. People have differing perceptions, differing understandings. And I notice, and Travis may be able to comment on this as well, because I audited uh, one or two, I can't recall at this point, of the county meetings about the appropriations. And there was some discussion in those meetings which reflected, I think, an incomplete understanding of the problem and the relationship of the governmental entities. So I think there's a lot of work to do for consistent communication. I think our work is not done. And I just want to conclude by echoing what Greg said. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And the only way to make a difference, as demonstrated by the Cornell University studies, they've been at this for 20 years. They have used various means of doing it, some more successful than others. They've done it on a scientific basis so they can compare one year to another, one area to another. They are really the gospel as far as deer management is concerned. And we are following their tenets on the advisory committee, and the city is. And I really recommend the Cornell document to all neighbors, all elected officials, and government officials. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Ken Garno raising his hand as well. Ken, if you'd like to say a few words. You're on mute still, Ken. Still not getting you.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Gotcha.
The first is for Justin. Justin.
You're in outer space, Ken.
Yeah.
Hey, Ken, do you want to try and use the chat? Are you on a keyboard? Why don't you want to chat in the question?
You can
Yeah, let me
always
try to
use one
put
of the call-in numbers too and just drop off the video.
Yeah, right.
That's very supernatural.
I'm imagining
well, while
his fingers may be typing, right, Counselor?
yes, it looks like Ken is typing. Maybe while Ken is prepping his question, I could ask. So we mentioned collecting data on car accidents and vehicle accidents and things of that nature. Could we go into what, if any, data is being collected currently and what the protocol is going to be for collecting data moving forward, and whose responsibility that will be, or whose purview that'll be, and how we plan on doing that? I mean, I don't know if Chief Schaaf is on, if deer vehicle accidents are already recorded, if that's data we can find elsewhere, but just curious what type of data we'd be looking for and how we'd collect it. And, you know, I saw there was a couple of other indicators that we might look at. So, and anyone who wants to comment on that about different data and indicators we could have going forward, and who would be doing that would be interesting to hear.
Counselor, this is Chief Schaaf. I checked with our traffic sergeant, Sands, who does all our traffic investigations, and he is not aware of, nor can he figure out how we can get that data from the current accident reports that we complete, which are a state form. It's an MV 107 provided by the state. We have to do our accident. So we don't know how to get that data out of that.
That's a consistent state form, Chief?
Yes, sir. The entire state uses that. It's MV 107.
It's an interesting challenge for us to try to overcome with getting a form like that changed.
Well,
Perhaps
Rich,
this will be a good. Sorry, go ahead.
Rich, most people don't report these. At least that's been my understanding over the years. So it might not be the form so much as that people choose not to do it because they don't want their insurance to go up. That at least has been the presentations by Cornell, as Tom mentioned, and others over the years that I've attended. That's pretty much been the statement.
Yeah, I can't confirm or deny that. I mean, I wouldn't argue with it. If somebody's done a study on it, I would tend to believe their study versus my anecdotal evidence.
Right.
So then if we could figure out a way to get that, I think what I'm hearing you say, Auditor Maroon, is that even if we could get that data, it might not be the most accurate data.
Right.
It's kind of like the reporting on Lyme disease.
Are there other metrics that we'll be collecting or looking to collect? Is there anything else that we'd be looking beyond vehicle damage that we're trying to collect data on?
One second. This is Justin with USDA. I just want to mention it. It's okay that only a small percentage, say, of your vehicle accidents, deer accidents, are reported, because that's going to be relatively the same every year. But it'll provide you a trend, especially if you had the before data, because it'd show you had 100 reported in the city per year, and then now after deer management you only have 50. We know it'll only be a small portion of the actual accident numbers maybe, but it would show you how the effectiveness of the work. So that's it's just nice. That's nice. Usually deer vehicle collisions are a nice way to manage it if you can find a way to track it. I know some of the small municipalities have found a way. I'm just not sure how. Maybe we can reach out to the towns and see how they're finding that info.
I mean, I know how we could do it, but it's kind of a heavy lift and just puts more burden on the officers. You create a new form and have them fill it out. And every time they responded to a deer accident report, but I can have discussion with the rest of the chief staff up here and see if there's an appetite for it, but we're already throwing more forms at the cops now with the right to know and they do this and do that. And people get buried in an avalanche of paperwork.
Counselor Driscoll, if I can.
Yeah, Travis. Yeah.
Yep. The county, we pulled a 10-year analysis because the county highway department picks up the carcasses of deer and thought that was a good kind of teller mark. And what we saw is over a 10-year period, there was no increase in that number of recovered carcasses. And so we anticipated, right, if you'd see a 10-year growth in deer density over that period, you should see that corresponding. And then what we found out when we talked to folks from Cornell about it and Dr. Underwood about it was that because the density is happening in areas where you have human population density, some of the roads are slower, and so your vehicle collision rate is going to be less because vehicles can come to a complete stop and not hit the deer. So it's not necessarily an accurate reflection of an increase in population if your population in the deer is happening in places that have high human population. So it probably isn't, in my opinion, necessarily the juice isn't worth the squeeze on that one. I know that the town of Manlius and Village of Fayetteville used some insurance reporting data to show some differential, but it's not something, frankly, from the county's perspective, we saw as it's a data point, but I don't know if it's necessarily the most accurate data point from what I've seen.
Okay. Perhaps we take this up further in the committee discussions that go on further and try to figure out what we'll do moving forward. So I just want to, Ken Garno was unfortunately lost in space, but he did give us some comments in the chat here. He said, Justin, what date would you have to have signed agreements so that you could start in November with debating? How far in advance do you need to be properly prepped, and when would you like to have everything signed and done?
I think if we shoot for an October 1 date, that gives us, a little wiggle room. So October 1 would be a good date.
Okay. And Ken also said his second point is, as the person who looked at over 40 sites the first year, if we don't get some DEC regulations changed, we'll need to use other methods that do not require using a firearm. So I'd also note that with Julie, who kind of put forward that perhaps parks would be the best home for trying to negotiate those neighbor those neighbor spots. I think Julie, Ken, and Tom and some others really did a lot of built some networks already in the neighborhood. So it'd probably be good to connect as we start the committee to get the list of everything that Ken's looked up and others have looked up to know what might be possible within the neighborhoods.
Can I just clarify really quick one point on there? I think
Sure.
parks right now, I'd like us to be the clearinghouse and the collecting agency of the addresses, not necessarily going the door to door, just because.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's why I was saying Ken, who has done the door to door, could probably provide you with some info to at least see which doors have been knocked already, what potentials might be out there, and then as we coordinate with the neighborhoods again, you guys would have that, have a spreadsheet or a database of what potentials are as we try to work with Justin for what might work and what might be good, be helpful. Okay, well, do any of my other counselors have any other questions? Hogan, Green? No? If not, I will pass it back to Greg Lowe, who said he would like to make some closing remarks. If any of the other stakeholders would like to say anything, feel free to hop in, Christina or Justin or anyone. But yeah, if not, Greg, take it.
Mine is a thank you to those who joined the call today and all have been part of the program. In particular, I want to close with a thank you to Councilor Driscoll, who has been the consistent, he took the baton from, Auditor Maroon and has been the consistent driving force behind keeping us all at this and working, and appreciate it, Joe. Appreciate your participation on the advisory group and your working as a liaison with the council. And thanks to the full council.
Yeah, as mentioned, Greg, it took pretty much everybody in the kitchen sink. We had to get academia in here, every layer of government, neighborhood people. So that's the kind of projects we like to see in city government. We can all come together and we can get some traction and see some things done. So thanks to Tom and Ken and all the community leaders who really have also spearheaded it, and of course former Councilor Maroon, Auditor Maroon, and Justin, Christina, Julie, Pete, everybody who's been involved. Thanks everyone for your teamwork. Chief Schaaf, everybody, thank you very much. And no further comments. I guess we'll call it a day, and hopefully we'll have a more robust program next year as well. All right. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Counselor.